I had an interesting experience earlier this week or last week as a parent. So I have he's 2 and 8 months, REA, 2 and 8 months year old boy and an 8 month old boy, Raz. And so almost exactly a year ago, so it was about a year and a half, a year and 8 months. We were hiking and he was in the hiking backpack. So, the like Deuter, backpacking bag that they just changed into a child seat. So he was sitting on my back. He's pretty sleepy and he started crying on the way down. We just hiked up and down a mountain. And he started crying and it was like a tired cry. He wasn't like really upset about anything. He wasn't hungry, he wasn't he just tired. And it just kind of kept going. And he's right, his head's right behind my head. I'm kind of gently saying, "It's okay, Arya, it's okay. We'll be back soon. You can fall asleep." That kind of tone, na 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 na, like really gentle. And after however many minutes, I don't remember how long this went on, I very firmly said, and it wasn't out of anger. I just kind of had to feel like, I wonder, like that's clearly not working. So I very firmly said, Arya, you're okay. And it wasn't angry, it was just firm like that. And he like snapped out of it. I couldn't see him, but I could kind of feel him do that like little head snap. And he stopped crying. He's like he wasn't he was verbal, he wasn't really speaking, but like if he could speak, I would have heard he would have said, whoa, okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm okay. You're right. And so that was a year ago. And kind of the genesis of this experience of, firmness is really useful for him. And I've seen that, a couple other times over the past year. And so this past 2 weeks ago, he started preschool for the first time. And it's 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday. It's his first time, being away from us. He's with my wife all day. And he's understandably and unsurprisingly, really upset, going very afraid of, mama leaving him. And even as he started to understand, okay, mama's going to come back. I know that. And he learned that and we talked about it. He's very verbal. And even if he wasn't, I would still, talk about it to him. But he started to learn to trust a little bit more and to feel a little bit safer in, the different dynamic, different context. However, for the first week and a half, in the evenings when he'd come home, he'd also be very tired. It was a stimulating new day and also scary. Mama left him. Yeah, she came back, but still, he was very, very whiny, which he wasn't really a whiny kid before that. It was really annoying. And sometimes I would speak out of anger, and that's my mistake. I wasn't regulated myself, and I don't think that's a good thing. But more often than not, I am regulated. I have control over myself. It takes effort, but I'm able to do it. And not that I was so consciously thinking back to a year ago in that experience hiking, but I realized that what he needs here is firmness, not the gentle. He also needs the gentleness and to know he's safe and to have softness, and also there is a little bit of a difference or a significant difference between my wife's vibe and demeanor with him and my vibe and demeanor with him. I can be very gentle and all of that, but it's a different type of gentleness than my wife's gentleness. But what he needs here is firmness and a firm structure around him, which I need to provide, and not only provide as me as the container around him, but to give him the skills and the tools and the container within himself to have that self-control and that firmness. And so one night, he'd been whining all day for many days. And I had done a little bit of the firmness beforehand, but I was giving him a bath. And it was about his bedtime, so he was maybe a little bit too tired. I should have probably done the bath half an hour earlier. But he was really, really, really upset and just kind of crying without even really understanding what was going on. To the point where, as I was filling up the bath and cleaning up the bathroom a little bit and just doing last minute, getting his pajamas and whatever out, I started ignoring him as he was saying, "I don't want to take a bath. I want to take a bath." I acknowledged it the first maybe two times, and then when it didn't change, I stopped and he just kind of hung out around me whining. As he got in the bath, he had the freak out went up to another level, and I very firmly grabbed him by the shoulders not in an not in an angry way, but in a firm way, kind of the way, with autistic children, like a tight hug can be very regulating for the nervous system, not just autistic children, it's just for humans. Straight jackets actually do that as well. Weighted blankets, like weighted therapy blankets, achieve that kind of regulation that just and just, a hug from someone does that. So it wasn't a hug per se, but my hands are fairly large and he's pretty small. Um, put a firm pressure on his, shoulders, upper back, held him firmly, again, not angrily, and looked him straight in the eye. And I said firmly, Arye, you're okay. And had him, make eye contact with me and said it a couple of times to kind of catch him and get him in my wavelength, kind of out of his own loop of crying and into my firm, you're okay, and that tone and that vibe kind of wavelength. And I could see him switch into it a little bit. Also a little bit afraid, but also he was afraid anyway, so willing to be in my wavelength. And I said, pull yourself together, which obviously is kind of a complex linguistic combination for a 2.5 year old, a 2 and 8 month year old. And so he took it literally, and with his arms, he kind of started trying to pull himself together, kind of crossing them in front of him and doing the squeezing thing. Whatever, fine. He's engaging, he's trying to do it. So like, great, great, that's really great. And kept very firmly saying, you're okay. You can do this. You're okay. Pull yourself together. You're okay. Just in that firm kind of kept him caught in my voice, basically. And as he started doing this more, then I put my two of my fingers in his, each of his palms, which is, fills up his palms. And I said, squeeze really hard, just because he had a lot of energy that was called up and kind of, I don't know if it's exactly the same in such a young person, but comparable to an adult's fight flight response. The energy called up for that, so that, squeeze really hard and make like a sound as you do it. And I started making that sound with him as he did it, and he started doing it more. It's the first time I've ever done that, and still, keeping eye contact with him for the most part as he was doing it. I saw him gain power and gain some level of control over himself, in addition to trust of me, and trust of me not because I was this gentle, telling him everything's okay type of person, but trust in me because I threw it back on him, and I was regulated myself, right? I wasn't being angry. I wasn't shouting at him. I was just providing that firmness that I could catch him in that firmness and teach him that he actually could do it himself. And so he still, he was able to calm down and actually enjoyed the bath for another, whatever, 3 minutes. Then I had to wash his hair. Haven't cut his hair yet. We won't until he's 3. And so it's quite long, and it's, have to comb it, and he doesn't like it at all. So then started crying again, and same thing. As he started crying, said, you're okay. You can do this, pull yourself together. And he was able to largely, and call it 70%, which is significant because he also was learning that he could do it. And he's also 2.5 and really tired and taking a bath, which he doesn't really like to do. So it's okay for him to have, not the best time. So fast forward, he falls asleep in 2 minutes. Fast forward to, let's say, midnight. And he wakes up. He sleeps on a little kind of toddler mattress next to our bed. And when he wakes up, I'll either drop down to his, if he wakes up at night, usually he's kicked his blanket off or something, I'll drop down, and if he falls asleep in a moment, he'll stay in his bed. If not, I'll just pull him into our bed and he'll fall asleep next to me. And kind of as I guess the energy of, the freak out earlier wasn't fully expelled, um, he just kind of started doing it half asleep and just really whiny, complaining about the blanket, complaining about his teddy bear, complaining, just whining. And I sleep I sleep with mouth tape, and I didn't want to take it off. And also my wife and infant were asleep in the bed as well, so I didn't want to be too loud either. And I wasn't gonna like reason with him at midnight when he's in the middle of like a week and a half long freak out, more or less. So, kind of, I'm just following my intuition largely here. And again, not really out of anger. I was definitely angry and annoyed, but I wasn't acting out of it. That wasn't the primary thing. I was letting him know that I was agitated. But more than that, and this was without words, because again, my mouth is taped, just so I breathe through my nose. I sleep better. I feel better when I wake up. Um, I held him again. I put him in the blanket, pulled him into my arms, and held him very tight. At a certain point, I actually got on top of him, not like kind of hovering over him, but also with enough pressure on him to have that same sense of firmness without obviously smothering or, scaring him uh in like a dangerous sense. And just almost started just like growling at him in a very, deep kind of rumble in my chest and lower throat growl. And same thing, I was able to catch him in that, and really I wasn't making him submit, right? I wasn't trying to show my dominance or my superiority. I was trying to get him to stop that just feedback loop of whiny freak out, which he doesn't like. It's a bad experience for him. He clearly doesn't like it. Um, and he clearly likes it. It feels good for him, and it's obviously really important later in life. But also just in this moment, I can tell he feels good when he's able to master himself to a certain degree, when he's able to take control. And so he was able to do that at midnight in our bed as I again kind of showed him how to do it. And I not that I didn't force him to do it. I couldn't force him to do it. This wasn't out of anger. This was I was expressing that I was agitated for sure, but I was also just catching him in that tone of firmness. I wasn't using words, but I was telling him through the frequency, through the vibration of my being and my interaction with him, that you're okay. You have to pull yourself together. You can pull yourself together, and that's just what we're doing. There's no other option. And also, I would kiss him on the forehead sometimes, and I would pull the tape off my mouth for a moment and say, I would say, "You're okay. I love you." Things like that, words that he knows. And I know that this worked for him and helped him regulate himself, because he did calm down and his breathing pattern changed, and he started to breathe more slowly, and he started to mumble to me and speak a little bit, and started to repeat, "I'm okay. I'm okay." And then he fell asleep and he slept through the night, which, he often wakes up, not always, but occasionally wake up, and he slept through the night after that. And the next morning, he didn't cry for the first time. It was the eighth day, maybe. It was like a week and a half, let's say, of going to preschool. And for the first time, he didn't cry. So there was some learning that happened, some skill he earned, that he gained, of self-control and of recognizing that he is safe and that his emotions are actually something that he can manage and work with and experience without being overwhelmed by them. It was a really interesting experience for me. It was also interesting for my wife because she was obviously awake. I was, she said it sounded like I was a wolf growling at my cub. And obviously she trusts me enough to not intervene, even though it sounds kind of scary. But she also heard Aryeh, she heard our toddler, and she heard him calming down, and she heard him relaxing, and she heard him fall asleep. And she also, she could hear my tone. It wasn't a threatening tone. There was no threat in it. There was firmness. There was power in it. And it's an interesting concept. And I was thinking about this the other day, and especially as at least the way my family is, as father, as the man of the house, I am the protector, right? It's safe inside of my house. Why is it safe inside of my house? Because I protect it, right? And I would protect it. And at night, I have a knife in my nightstand and I have a bat near my bed. Like I have the capability of danger, of violence. And it's interesting because that's actually what makes me safe. The fact that I have an extreme capability for violence is what makes me safe for my family, because I know how to project. I would know, I will know, I do know, and I would, if necessary, project that violence outwards, which creates a container internally of safety. And so there's an interesting dichotomy there, right? So usually you don't put violence and safety in the same sentence, but it's actually my capability of violence, my power, which can be destructive, which can be productive, which can be both simultaneously, is actually what makes me the protector. It's what makes me safe. And that's, in a sense, what I was imparting to Aryeh, to my toddler, is, not only do I have power and I will protect you, and you know that, and he does know that, but also you have power also. You have power inside of yourself, and you have access to it. You have capability to access it. You can learn the skill of accessing it. The energy of your freak out, of your whine right now, if you get control over it, it feels really good. Not in some megalomaniac type of way, but in a control and connecting to yourself and a balance and a regulation type of way. And so the only way I'm able to do that, to teach him that, is because I'm regulated. Right. And so if I was dysregulated, if I was acting purely out of anger, my actions would look more like trying to control him. Stop whining, stop shouting, go to sleep, stop complaining about the blanket. It would be this just very flimsy, basically the adult version of whining myself. But I didn't do that. Sometimes I do that and it's just stupid and I recognize it and I apologize afterwards. But what I did do was maintain my own regulation. And in a sense, that's kind of what at least one aspect of good talk therapy is I provide the container as a therapist, as a grounded, regulated person for the other person to have their experience, to talk about whatever traumatic event, or it doesn't have to be necessarily, capital T trauma, but to talk about whatever, have their experience, and then via my own regulation to mirror me and to find regulation themselves. And there is an element of gentleness to it, but there's also an element of firmness. And you need both. You need the combination of the two. So as I've thought about this more and discussed it with my wife, basically, over the past 2 weeks since he started preschool and the whining really increased, and then, the eventual response, which I kind of figured out, of the firmness, and teaching him his own, internal control and regulation mechanisms. A fundamental piece of it is actually respect. And I implicitly, and in some sense explicitly, but certainly implicitly, I'm telling him that I respect him. I respect him enough to believe that he is capable of regulating himself, that he is capable of controlling himself, that he is capable of doing this thing which I'm demanding of him. I wouldn't demand it if I didn't think he was capable of it. It would be stupid on my part. That would just be out of anger. That would just be aggressive, and that would be dangerous. Because if my demand can't be met by him and it isn't good for him, then that is dangerous. It's a bad thing. So there's a real element of respect implicit, and sometimes I do make it explicit in terms of telling, like, I know you can do this. I haven't used the word respect. I think it's a little bit too big for a toddler, but now that I'm thinking about it out loud, maybe I should. But I respect him enough to believe that he can do it, and to show him how to do it, and to be there with him as he learns how to do it. And in a sense, as I learn how to do it as well. Right? I'm already regulated. I've already spent a lot of time practicing and working on that. But this is also a learning curve for me. He's my first, and it'll also, I'm sure, be different with, my younger son and, God willing, kids after that. But another aspect of this, not just the respect in the moment of controlling himself, the first day we brought him, or my wife brought him to preschool, and he was hysterical. He was, screaming bloody murder. He had terror in his eyes because for the first time ever, mama was leaving him, which is understandably a terrifying experience for a toddler. We talked about it that night, and he also cried a lot when she picked him up, because he became okay during the first day, but when she went to pick him up, he cried again when he saw her. Just the emotion was obviously still pent up and still there. And we spoke, and my wife said, "Why are we doing this to him?" And what we concluded was, this was a thought for signing him up as well, in addition to just giving my wife a bit of a break and socializing. Like, he has a good time. He really loves it. What we're doing, and again, this goes into respect, is we're teaching him and we're helping him learn from his own experience that we are very, very trustworthy as parents. He can respect us and our authority and our decision making because we're not going to leave him in a dangerous place. And we trust him enough and we respect him enough that wherever we do choose to leave him, and whatever challenging situation we put him in, he can stand up to it. Right. And obviously we're very selective with where we leave him. We didn't just drop him at a random person's house and say, here's $50, take care of him for the week. But he doesn't know that. And he can't comprehend that. And his, framework of reality is not sophisticated enough to even have those thoughts. It's just pure terror. And as he learns to not just to cope with it, but to trust us and trust himself, there is an implicit level of respect which is garnered through that and which is created through that. which, he's only 2.5 right now, but that this is setting the framework. This is setting the base for our family for how we're going to do things as, as they get older. Right now he can't clean dishes, but he really likes helping. He likes pretending to clean dishes. He likes standing at the sink, running the water for way too long. We always have to turn it off, but doing something which vaguely resembles cleaning the dishes or loading the dishwasher because that's what he sees, myself and my wife doing. And so there's also, this bleeds into other areas because when what I've started doing, well, actually, my wife and I are both reading a really great book. Or so far it's pretty good. It's called Hunt, Gather, Parent. I forget the name of the author, but I'm sure you could find it based on the title. Um, Kids want to help. He always asks, he always says he wants to help. He wants to help me crack the eggs. He wants to help me stir it. He wants to help me, whatever, to literally do anything. And so even though he takes 10 minutes to, take one plate to put it in the dishwasher and then he wants to rearrange it and then he also wants to run over there and do something else, I'm letting him do it. And I'm respecting him enough to say, yeah, you're a valuable member of this group, of this team that is our family. With that membership, with that respect, comes certain responsibilities. And I respect you enough and I trust you enough, and I know you have the skills, or at least the capability to develop the skills to be not only a useful member of this family and this team, but an integral and important, a responsible and a cherished member of this family, not just because of, you're my son and I on some level will love you no matter what, probably even if, God forbid he really takes a bad turn in life. Um, but because of your actions, because of your behavior, because of who you are and how you are choosing, in a sense, whatever level of choice toddlers have, and they do have actually, I think, a significant level of choice, you're choosing to show up in a way which is in partnership, which is in mutual respect and some very, very early semblance of responsibility. And all of that, as he develops into an adult, as I, turn into an older adult, um, those have to be intentionally done. Those have to be thought about. They have to be reminded. They have to be crafted in a certain way. Otherwise, things will very easily go haywire. Maybe in other cultures or other epochs in human history, it was just more ingrained. I don't know. I don't care because that isn't how it is for us and for our family. This has to be kind of created from not from scratch, but definitely very intentionally and with a constant reminding of it and a constant crafting of it and a constant evaluating, not in a hyper academic sense, but in just a real observing sense, what are his natural inclinations? What are his skill sets? What's his growth edge right now? And not that everything is about, peak performance competition, but he loves learning. He loves getting that control over himself. Now he loves going to preschool. This morning, he asked to go to preschool at 6:15. It doesn't start till 9 a.m. Whereas if preschool was mentioned, 2 days ago at 6:15 in the morning, he'd start crying and wouldn't stop crying until about 9:30. So there's an obvious benefit to him.